The story I'm about to tell you is not an urban legend. It's not a campfire story, whispered among teenagers in the woods. This story is real, and once you hear it, you may never look at an empty train station the same way again. It all began in Hollow Creek, Pennsylvania, a quiet town tucked between rolling forests and the decaying remains of coal country. Like most forgotten places in America, Hollow Creek carried scars of its past. Factories shut down, families moved away, the streets grew quieter every year, but there was one place no one ever forgot. The old Hollow Creek Railway Depot, locals said. The depot had been abandoned since the 1960s, after a catastrophic train fire claimed dozens of lives. They said the flames were so intense, passengers were burned alive in their seats, screams echoing across the valley that night like an endless siren. The tracks had long since rusted over, swallowed by weeds and vines, and yet, sometimes, late at night, people swore they still heard the whistle, a long, mournful cry of iron and steam, a whistle that no living train could have blown. That's where Ethan Miller comes in. Ethan wasn't a ghost hunter or a paranormal investigator. He was just 24, a college dropout with too much time and too much ego. One night, drinking with friends, the topic came up as it always did: the Hollow Creek Depot. The whistle. The fire. And someone dared him. Spend the night there. Film it. Bring back proof. Ethan, cocky as ever, smirked. Easy money. Y'all are scared of some burned up train tracks. Please. But behind the bravado, there was something else. Something Ethan hadn't told anyone. For weeks, he'd been dreaming of a train roaring through endless black tunnels, its windows glowing orange with fire. Inside, passengers stared at him, eyeless, skin melted, their mouths wide in screams he could never hear. Every time he woke up, he felt the echo of that whistle deep in his skull. So, when the dare came, Ethan didn't hesitate. Maybe deep down, he thought the dreams and the whispers were connected. Maybe he wanted answers, or maybe the depot had already chosen him. That night, just past 11, Ethan arrived at the Hollow Creek Depot. The place was a skeleton. The roof sagged, the benches were splintered, every window shattered. His flashlight cut through thick dust, illuminating old ticket stubs littering the floor, rusted rails vanishing into shadow. The air was wrong, thick, heavy, like the whole building was holding its breath. Ethan laughed nervously into his phone camera. Midnight challenge. Abandoned Hollow Creek Depot. Gonna prove all you cowards wrong. He set up camp near the broken ticket counter. A sleeping bag, a 6-pack of beer, and, because he was streaming live to his friends, he kept talking, filling the silence with dumb jokes. But the silence was stronger, deeper. Every word he spoke seemed swallowed by the dark dot around midnight. He heard it. The whistle, faint, distant, but real. It grew louder, until the walls trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling. Ethan spun his camera toward the tracks. Nothing, and yet, he could feel it. The ground shaking beneath him, the rush of an engine screaming toward the station. Suddenly, his flashlight flickered out. Darkness swallowed everything. Then came the footsteps. At first, one or two, the shuffle of shoes on concrete, then more, dozens, surrounding him. Ethan raised his phone, its dim glow barely cutting the dark, and that's when he saw them. Figures. Dozens of them, filling the platform, dressed in scorched suits and dresses from another time. Skin blistered, eyes hollow, faces charred black. They weren't standing, they were swaying, as if the fire still licked their bodies. One by one, their heads turned toward him, and they whispered in unison, "You shouldn't have called us." Ethan dropped his phone. The camera fell sideways, showing only a blur of shadow and dust. But the audio kept recording. First, his frantic breathing, then his screams, and finally, the sound of a train roaring through the station. Screeching wheels, windows full of screaming faces, then silence. The next morning, Ethan's friends came looking for him. They found his phone, lying cracked on the concrete floor. The live stream had ended hours ago. Ethan himself. Gone. No footprints, no trace, nothing. Except for one thing. On the wall above the ticket counter, burned into the concrete, were 5 words: "We are still passengers." That was the beginning. The first disappearance tied to Hollow Creek in years. But not the last. Because after Ethan vanished, something woke up in that depot. And it was hungry. 3 days after Ethan Miller disappeared, Hollow Creek wasn't the same. The town had always been quiet, but now, silence carried a different weight. People walked faster. Shops closed earlier. Conversations stopped. Whenever someone mentioned the depot. And though no one wanted to admit it, everyone had heard it. That night, Ethan vanished. Just before midnight, the long, mournful whistle rolled through the valley, louder than it had been in decades. Dogs howled. Windows rattled. Old folks crossed themselves and whispered prayers. Everyone heard it, and everyone knew what it meant. The depot wasn't sleeping anymore. Ethan's disappearance didn't go unnoticed. The Hollow Creek Police Department was small, just a handful of officers working out of a brick building that looked more like a library than a station. Detective Sarah Donnelly, 38, had lived in Hollow Creek her whole life. She knew every back road, every family, every rumor, and she knew the depot. Her grandfather had worked there, back when trains still ran. She'd grown up with stories of that night, the fire, the screaming, the bodies they never recovered. So when she was called to investigate Ethan's disappearance, a knot formed in her stomach, because she already knew where the trail would lead. The boy's phone was the only evidence. Sarah watched the cracked screen in her office, the faint glow reflecting in her tired eyes. The footage was grainy, shaky. Most of it showed nothing but dust and shadow. But the audio, the whistle, the footsteps, the voices whispering in unison. "You shouldn't have called us." Sarah stopped the video, goosebumps crawling across her arms. She told herself it was a prank, a hoax. Some audio overlay the kid had edited to freak out his friends. But deep down, she knew better. Meanwhile, Ethan's closest friends weren't waiting for police answers. There were 4 of them. Jake, the one who'd dared Ethan in the first place. Loud, reckless, always laughing too hard. Maya, quiet, sharp-eyed, Ethan's childhood friend. She hadn't slept since the night he vanished. Chris, Ethan's cousin, heavyset, skeptical, always trying to be the voice of reason. Lily, Ethan's ex-girlfriend, who still carried a torch for him, though she'd never admit it. They gathered in Jake's basement, the air thick with cigarette smoke and fear. Jake slammed a beer can on the table. "This is bullshit. He didn't just vanish. The cops aren't gonna do jack. We need to go back out there." Chris shook his head violently. "No way. I saw that video. You heard those voices. I'm not stepping foot near that depot." Maya leaned forward, her voice trembling. "Ethan's still out there. I can feel it. We can't just leave him." Lily didn't say anything. She just stared at the floor, twisting a silver locket around her neck. Inside it, a photo of her and Ethan taken years before. When things were simpler, the silence stretched. Then Jake grinned. "Tomorrow night, midnight, we go in together. 5 of us went in, 5 of us come out. Deal." But when he looked around, no one smiled back. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard it, the whistle, echoing through her skull. And worse, she saw him, Ethan, standing on the platform, his skin burned, his eyes hollow, reaching for her. Maya woke up screaming. The next evening, Detective Sarah drove out to the depot alone. The building loomed in the fading light, jagged against the horizon like broken teeth. She stepped onto the cracked platform, her flashlight cutting through weeds and dust. The place smelled of rust and ash, as if the fire had never gone out. Sarah ran her hand along the scorched wall, tracing grooves in the stone. At first, she thought they were just cracks. But as her light fell across them, she froze. They weren't cracks. They were words. "We are still passengers." The same message found above the ticket counter. But this time, there were more. Dozens of lines scratched deep into the walls, the benches, even the floorboards. Some were names, dozens of names, half erased, but still legible, and at the bottom of the list, barely visible under layers of dust, Ethan Miller. Sarah staggered back, her chest tightening. The boy had been gone less than 3 days, and yet his name was already here, already carved into the walls of the dead. Suddenly, the air grew colder, her breath fogged in the beam of her flashlight. And then she heard it. The whistle. Long. Low. Close. Her flashlight flickered. The ground trembled beneath her boots. Sarah turned toward the tracks, and for a split second, she saw it. A train, black iron, windows glowing orange with fire, screaming faces pressed against the glass. Then darkness. The depot was empty again. Sarah stumbled back to her car, slamming the door, her hands shaking as she started the engine. She told herself it wasn't real. It couldn't be real. But as she sped down the winding road, she glanced in her rearview mirror and froze. In the reflection for just a moment, she saw Ethan sitting in her back seat, burned, smiling. The next day, word spread fast, for more kids were planning to enter the depot that night, and Sarah knew if they went in, they wouldn't come out. Because once the whistle calls you, you're already a passenger. The 4 of them swore they wouldn't do it. They promised each other never step foot in the depot. But by midnight, they were standing at its gates. The moon hung heavy over Hollow Creek, bloated and pale. Drowning the valley in silver light, the depot rose ahead like a corpse. Its windows hollow eyes, its roof sagging like a rotted spine. Jake led the way, of course, grinning, carrying a backpack stuffed with beer, a crowbar, and a GoPro strapped to his chest. "Come on," he said, waving the others forward. "It's just a building. We go in, we film, we leave." Ethan's probably hiding out somewhere, laughing his ass off. Chris muttered under his breath, "Yeah, except his name's already carved in the wall." No one answered him. They stepped inside. The air was wrong immediately, stale, heavy, filled with a faint stench of ash and rust. Their footsteps echoed too loudly, like the building was swallowing the sound. Lily wrapped her arms tight around herself, shivering. "This place feels sick." Maya's eyes darted everywhere. She hadn't told the others about her dreams. Ethan, standing on this very platform, reaching for her with burned hands, and now, standing here. She could almost feel his presence, close, too close. Jake flicked on a lantern, sweeping the beam across the platform, the benches, the cracked tiles, the blackened walls. At first, it looked like just an abandoned ruin, but then they saw them. The carvings, hundreds of names, gouged deep into the walls, layered on top of each other, overlapping until they became a sea of jagged letters. Some old and faded, others sharp and fresh. Chris crouched down, running his fingers across one. "Jesus Christ. These go back decades." Maya swallowed hard. "Look for Ethan's." It didn't take long. Near the ticket counter, scratched in deep and ugly lines, was his name. Ethan Miller. Fresh, raw, like someone had carved it yesterday. Jake forced a laugh. "Okay, yeah, creepy as hell. Probably some bored kids messing around." But even as he said it, the lantern flickered. The air grew colder, and then came the sound. At first, faint, like a distant hum, then clearer, footsteps, not theirs, dozens of them, shuffling across the platform. The 4 of them froze, every breath sharp in their throats. Lily whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. But the footsteps grew louder. Jake swung the lantern toward the tracks. The light caught them, figures, dozens, standing in the shadows. Men, women, children, faces scorched, skin blistered, clothes tattered with old-fashioned cuts. Their hollow eyes glowed faintly in the dark. They weren't moving toward the kids, not yet. They were swaying in unison, like they were waiting. The lantern flickered again, and the whistle blew. The sound was deafening. The walls shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. The ground trembled, as if something enormous was hurtling down the tracks. And then they saw it. A light, far down the tunnel, growing brighter, closer. The shriek of metal on metal filled the air. Jake's grin finally broke. Holy shit, it's real. The train roared into the station, but not like any train that had ever run on Earth. Its iron body was blackened with soot, its windows blazing orange, like furnaces inside. Silhouettes writhed and screamed, their hands slamming against the glass. The sound was muffled, but the terror in their faces was clear. The train screeched to a stop. The doors groaned open. A blast of heat and ash poured out, rolling across the platform. The burned figures on the platform began moving, boarding one by one, silent, obedient, as if this was their stop, as if this was what they had been waiting for, all along. Jake stumbled back. Nope, we're not doing this. We're leaving now. But before they could run, a voice cut through the chaos, soft, unbroken, and familiar. Maya. She froze. There he was, standing in the train's doorway. Ethan, his skin charred, his eyes hollow sockets, glowing faintly, and yet his mouth twisted into something almost like a smile. Maya, come with me. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Lily grabbed her arm, screaming, "Don't you fucking move." But Ethan raised his hand, reaching out, and behind him, the passengers pressed closer, faces twisted in eternal screams, clawing at the windows. Maya whispered, "Ethan," and then all at once the train's lights went black. The platform plunged into darkness. Screams erupted, the sound of claws scraping concrete, footsteps rushing toward them from every direction. Jake's lantern shattered on the ground. Chris fumbled with his phone light, shaking uncontrollably. Figures were everywhere now, burned hands grabbing at their clothes, their skin, the smell of ash and rot choking the air. Jake swung the crowbar wildly, hitting nothing but shadows. Lily's scream cut through the dark, then stopped, as if a hand had clamped over her mouth. And through the chaos, the whistle blew. Again, long, mournful, final, when silence returned. The depot was empty. No train, no passengers, no kids, just the echo of footsteps, fading into the night, and one new name, freshly carved into the wall. Lily Carter. Detective Sarah Donnelly sat alone in her office, staring at the empty evidence board. Ethan Miller missing now. Lily Carter missing. The reports weren't even filed yet. But Sarah knew. She'd been to the depot earlier that morning, just as the sun broke over the valley, and there it was, freshly carved, still sharp in the stone. Lily Carter. The same jagged letters as Ethan's, as if someone or something was keeping a record. Sarah had run her hand over the carving, fingers trembling. The grooves were warm, like they'd just been cut. Back at the station, she pulled an old cardboard box from the archives, her grandfather's box. It had been gathering dust for decades. Old photos, newspaper clippings, a charred pocket watch that never ticked again. She spread everything across her desk, her pulse quickening. At the center was a yellowed newspaper headline from October 13th, 1963. Hollow Creek Depot engulfed in flames, -73 feared dead. The article told the official story. A crowded night train was delayed due to a signaling failure. Passengers waited inside the depot. Somewhere, a lantern fell, igniting old timber soaked with oil. The fire spread in minutes. 73 souls burned alive before rescue could reach them. Their bodies, most, never recovered. The depot was condemned, closed forever. But that wasn't the part that chilled Sarah. It was the photo, a grainy black and white image of the depot burning, flames devouring the windows, and in the smoke above the roof, shapes, faces, dozens of them, screaming silently through the black haze. Sarah leaned back in her chair, heart hammering. Her grandfather had been there that night. He survived, but barely. and he never spoke of it, not once, until the night before he died. She remembered it clearly. He'd grabbed her wrist, his eyes wide with terror, even on his deathbed, and, he whispered, "The train never stopped. Sarah, it never stopped. They're still waiting for it." The memory left her shaking, and then the phone rang. She nearly jumped out of her chair. With trembling hands, she answered. "Detective Donnelly," a man's voice rasped. "This is Father O'Malley. You don't know me, but I know what you're dealing with." Sarah frowned. "Excuse me. The depot, the boy, the girl. You can't fight it with police tape and search warrants. This isn't a crime scene. It's a harvest." Her skin went cold. "Who the hell are you?" But the line went dead. Meanwhile, Jake, Chris, and Maya weren't sleeping. They were hiding. After Lily vanished into the dark, they had run until their legs gave out. They never spoke of what they saw: the train, the burned passengers, Eason. But the silence between them was heavier than words. They crashed in Jake's garage, too afraid to be alone. Chris sat in the corner, rocking back and forth. They carved her name. It's like the depot knew she was next. "We're all next." Jake snapped at him, voice cracking. "Shut the fuck up, man. We're fine. We just need to figure out what it wants." Maya stared at them both, hollow-eyed. "No," she whispered. "It doesn't want anything. It's just taking." That night, Maya dreamed again. The whistle, the fire, the train pulling into the station. But this time, she wasn't just watching. She was inside. The carriage was filled with passengers, burned, faceless, writhing in agony. Their screams echoed through her skull. Hands reached for her, tearing at her skin, pulling her deeper into the inferno. And at the end of the aisle, Ethan stood waiting. His lips moved, but the words were drowned by the whistle. Still, she could read them, one by one. She woke up gasping, clawing at her throat, her sheets damp with sweat. The following morning, Sarah drove to St. Mary's Church, where Father O'Malley had left the cryptic call. The priest was old, thin eyes shadowed by years of sleepless nights. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. "You think this is about a fire?" he said, voice low. But the fire was never the beginning. The depot was built on cursed ground. Every town has its secrets. Ours is the track. Sarah frowned. "The track?" He nodded gravely. "They say the first men who laid it here in the 1800s used convict labor. Dozens died building the tunnel, crushed, buried alive. The company covered it up, but the dead don't stay quiet. When the depot burned, it only gave them more fuel, more passengers." He leaned closer, his voice almost a whisper. "The whistle isn't just a sound, it's a summons, and once you hear it, you've already bought your ticket." Sarah felt her stomach turn because she'd heard it. Clear as day, the priest saw the look on her face and crossed himself. "You need to leave this town, detective. Leave it and never look back before the train calls you again." But Sarah wasn't leaving. She couldn't, because 3 kids were still out there, and the depot had their names already. That evening, she drove back to Hollow Creek Depot. The sun was sinking, painting the valley in blood-red light. The building loomed ahead, waiting. She stepped onto the platform, gripping her flashlight tight, and there it was. Another name, freshly carved. Chris Martinez. Chris hadn't slept in 2 days. He sat hunched on the edge of Jake's garage couch, his eyes red-rimmed, hands trembling. The smell of gasoline and rust from the tools around them seeped into his clothes, but he barely noticed. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw it, the fire, the train, the faces pressed against the glass, screaming silently as flames ate them alive. And last night, in his dream, he saw something worse. His own face burned, melted, slamming against the train window with the rest. Jake paced the garage like a caged animal, refusing to sit still. "Okay, listen," he said, voice too loud, too fast. We're not crazy, alright? That train, whatever the fuck it was, it's not real. It's some mass hallucination. Gas leak, mold, something. Maya sat curled up in the corner, knees pulled to her chest, silent. Her face was pale. Her lips cracked, but her eyes never left Chris, because she knew. She'd seen Ethan in her dream. She'd heard his words, one by one, and Chris was next. That night, Chris tried to stay awake. He chugged energy drinks, blasted music, slapped himself when his head started to nod, but around 3 a.m., exhaustion finally dragged him under. The dream began the same way. The depot dark, rotting, filled with shadows, but this time, the platform wasn't empty. It was crowded, packed wall to wall with burned figures. Their skin blistered, their eyes hollow. They swayed in unison, whispering in a voice like crackling fire. Chris, Chris. He stumbled back, heart hammering. No, no, leave me the fuck alone. But the whispers only grew louder. The crowd parted on. There, standing in the train doorway, was Lily. Her skin was blackened, her hair burned to ash, but her eyes were still hers, soft, sad. Chris, she whispered, her voice raw and broken. It doesn't hurt if you don't fight it. He shook his head violently, tears streaming down his face. No, no, I'm not going with you. I'm not Tom. Not. But then he saw Ethan behind her, and behind Ethan, dozens of others, dozens of them, staring at him, waiting, and the whistle screamed. Chris woke up screaming, bolting upright on the couch. Jake nearly dropped his beer. Jesus, man. What the hell? But Chris didn't answer, because carved into his left arm, fresh and bleeding, were letters, jagged, ugly. Chris Martinez. By morning, Sarah Donnelly was at his house. Jake had called in panic, his bravado finally cracking. When Sarah saw the carving on Chris's arm, her stomach dropped. It wasn't just on the wall anymore. It was on him. This isn't possible, she whispered, tracing the letters without touching them. Chris looked at her with hollow eyes. They already have me? Sarah tried to reassure him, but her own hands were shaking. She'd seen this before, sort of. Her grandfather's journals. One passage she'd read the night before echoed in her head. Once the mark is made, the passenger is chosen. No priest, no prayer, no fire can save them. The train comes for them all the same. That evening, Sarah stationed herself outside Chris's house, determined not to let him out of her sight. She sat in her car, eyes fixed on the window of his room. But sometime past midnight, her head dipped, heavy with exhaustion, and in that brief moment, the whistle blew. Her eyes snapped open. The sound rattled her bones. She looked up at the window, and Chris was gone. Sarah rushed inside, bursting through the front door. Jake and Maya were already screaming, searching the house. The front door hadn't opened. The windows were still locked, but Chris was nowhere. The only trace of him left behind was his phone, lying on the bed, camera still recording. Sarah picked it up with trembling hands. The video was short, less than a minute at first. It showed Chris sitting on the bed, staring into the lens, breathing heavily. Behind him, the room was still, silent. Then, faintly, a low whistle echoed through the microphone. Chris's eyes widened. He turned his head toward the window, and in the reflection of the glass, something massive and blazing roared past iron fire and screaming faces. The phone slipped from his hands, the video shaking violently. A burned hand reached across the screen. Then static. When the video ended, the phone vibrated in Sarah's palm. The screen lit up, new file saved, a single photo. She opened it, and there was Chris, pressed against a black window, his face blistered and melting, his hands clawing at the glass from inside the train, his mouth open in a silent scream. The next morning, at Hollow Creek Depot, another name appeared on the wall. Chris Martinez. Jake was unraveling. He slammed his fists against the garage wall, over and over, until his knuckles bled. First Ethan, then Lily, Now Chris. No, this is bullshit. This can't be happening. Maya sat on the oil-stained floor, shaking. Her eyes were wide, hollow, as if something inside her had snapped the moment Chris vanished. We saw it, she whispered. The train took him. It's real. We're all next. Jake spun on her, furious, terrified. Shut the fuck up, Maya. Don't you dare say that. We're not. He stopped. Because in the silence that followed, they both heard it. Faint, distant, the sound of a whistle. Detective. Sarah Donnelly hadn't slept in 2 nights. Chris's phone sat on her desk, the frozen image of his screaming face burned into her brain. She kept replaying it, frame by frame, looking for answers, but there were none. Only one detail stood out, in the reflection of the train. Window behind Chris, she saw herself, not clearly, not in focus, but unmistakable. Her face, standing on the platform of Hollow Creek Depot, watching as the train passed. She staggered to the bathroom, splashing water on her face. Her reflection trembled in the cracked mirror, and then she saw it. Her forearm at first. It looked like a scratch, but when she wiped the water away, her stomach dropped. Letters, jagged, bleeding faintly beneath the skin. Sarah Donnelly. Her breath hitched. No, it can't be me. It can't. But deep down, she knew. Once your name was carved, the clock had already started. Back in Jake's garage, the kids argued in frantic whispers. We have to leave town, Maya said, her voice trembling. Tonight, right now, we get in a car, we drive until the whistle stops. Jake shook his head violently. No, running won't change anything. Didn't you hear what Sarah said? The depot keeps pulling us back. Ethan tried to leave, remember? He talked about moving away after graduation, and look where he is now. Maya's lips quivered. So what then? Just wait for it to take us. Jake's jaw clenched. No, we fight it. That night, Jake returned to the depot alone. He carried a crowbar in one hand and a can of gasoline in the other. If the depot wanted them, he'd burn it to the ground once and for all. He kicked the rotting doors open and stormed inside. The air was heavy, thick with the stench of smoke that had never left since 1963. Come on, he shouted into the shadows. You want me? Take me, you sons of bitches. The silence stretched, and then the whistle. So close, it rattled his ribs. Jake spun, crowbar raised. The depot was alive. The walls shuddered, groaning as though they were breathing. Windows rattled, dust falling from the rafters, and on the far wall, fresh letters carved themselves into the stone, as if an invisible blade were etching them in real time. Jake Thompson. He dropped the crowbar, his body shaking. No, please. The whistle roared again, deafening this time, and through the cracked window, he saw the glow of fire approaching. The train, at that exact moment, Sarah arrived. Her headlights cut across the depot as she screeched her car to a halt. She sprinted inside, gun drawn, flashlight slicing through the dark. Jake, she shouted. She found him on his knees, staring blankly at the wall, where his name now glistened red. His lips were moving soundlessly, his skin pale as ash. Sarah grabbed his shoulders, shaking him. Jake, look at me. Stay with me. But he didn't. His eyes were fixed on something behind her. Slowly, Sarah turned and froze through the broken windows of the depot. Fire and smoke poured past. A massive black engine roared by, its wheels screaming, sparks raining. Down carriages filled with burned, screaming passengers clattered by, faces pressed to the glass, hands slamming against it, and among them Ethan, Lily, Chris. Their melted mouths opened in silent screams, their eyes wide with agony, and then Sarah saw something worse, her own reflection in the train window. Standing inside the carriage, pressed against the glass, waiting, the whistle shrieked. One final time, Sarah collapsed to her knees, her ears bleeding. The Train thundered past and vanished into the night, leaving only smoke and silence. Jake sobbed beside her, shaking uncontrollably. "They've got me," he whispered. "They've already got me." And when Sarah looked back at the wall, 2 names were glowing fresh in the stone: Jake Thompson, Sarah Donnelly. Maya hadn't left her bedroom in 36 hours. The blinds were drawn, the lights off, every mirror covered with old sheets. She sat on the floor with her knees pulled to her chest, whispering prayers she barely remembered from childhood. Ethan, Lily, Chris, Jake, and now Detective Donnelly. One by one. Everyone marked. Everyone except her. Jake's voice echoed in her head. "We fight it." But he was marked now. Sarah too. And Maya. Why not her? That question gnawed at her worse than the whistle. Her phone buzzed. At first she ignored it, but when the vibration wouldn't stop, she finally picked it up with trembling hands. It was a new video from Chris's phone, but that was impossible. Chris's phone was with Detective Donnelly. She'd shown them the last recording herself. Maya's thumb hovered over the screen. Her heart pounded so hard she thought her chest would crack. She pressed play. The screen filled with fire, a dark tunnel lit by the glow of burning passengers, pressed against windows, clawing to get out. Their mouths opened and closed. Silent, but the sound that came through the phone was deafening. A whistle, and then the camera shifted to Maya. She saw herself, sitting exactly as she was now on the floor, knees to her chest, in the dark. But her reflection in the video looked up at the camera and smiled. Maya dropped the phone. Screaming, it hit the floor, and the video cut out. The screen went black. Then new text appeared, etched in jagged, burning letters across the glass. Maya Collins reserved. That night, Sarah returned to Maya's house. Her face was pale, drawn tight from lack of sleep. Her arm was wrapped in bandages, where her name had carved itself, blood seeping through. Jake followed behind her, staggering like a ghost, his eyes dull. Broken. Maya let them in, shaking violently. "Why me?" she cried. "Why haven't they marked me yet? Why are they waiting?" Sarah didn't answer, because she already knew. In her grandfather's journals, one passage had been burned into her memory. The last name is not carved. The final passenger is chosen, not taken. When the train is full, the conductor waits for the one who opens the door. Sarah's voice was hoarse as she finally spoke. "They don't want to take you, Maya. They want you to join them." Maya blinked through tears. "What does that mean?" Jake's voice broke. "It means you're supposed to finish it." The air in the room grew heavy. The whistle howled outside, so close it rattled the windows. The floorboards trembled beneath them, dust drifting from the ceiling. And when Maya dared to pull the sheet off one mirror, she screamed, because her reflection wasn't alone. Behind her stood Ethan, Lily, Chris, all burned, all reaching, and at the very back of the mirror, towering over them, was a figure in a scorched conductor's uniform, its face hidden beneath a cracked, melted mask of iron, its eyes glowing like coals. The conductor, the whistle screamed again, shattering the mirror. Glass exploded across the room, and in every shard that hit the floor, Maya saw the same thing, herself standing on the train. The night air reeked of smoke. Sarah, Jake, and Maya stumbled from the shattered mirror, glass crunching underfoot. The whistle still pulsed in their bones, a low, endless vibration that refused to fade. Jake pressed his hands against his ears, rocking back and forth. I saw all of them staring, burning. Ethan, Lily, Chris, oh God, they were begging me. Sarah knelt, gripping his shoulders. Listen to me. They're gone, but we're not. Not yet. We have a chance if we figure out what it wants. But even as she said it, her arm burned beneath the bandages. The carved letters glowed faintly red through the fabric, pulsing like a heartbeat. Maya staggered backward, shaking her head violently. No more chances. It wants me. That thing, the conductor, I saw it. It was waiting for me. Sarah's face hardened. Yes, because you're the one it needs. Maya's eyes filled with tears. Why me? Sarah swallowed hard. She had read enough of her grandfather's notes to know. In 1963, the train didn't just burn by accident. Someone let it in. Someone opened the door to the depot. Jake's trembling stopped. He looked up, eyes wide. You mean someone chose it? Sarah nodded grimly. The conductor always needs one to invite him. The final passenger. The one who gives permission. Her eyes locked on Maya. And this time, it's you. The whistle blared again so close, it shook the house on its foundation. Maya clutched her chest, gasping. The sound didn't just pierce her ears, it burned inside her lungs, forcing the air out of her body as though it were trying to claim her breath. The lights flickered, and then, from the shadows of the hallway, it stepped forward. The conductor, its charred uniform, clung to blackened flesh. The fabric fused into skin. Its face was hidden behind a melted iron mask. One side twisted into a grotesque smile, the other dripping, as if it had been half melted away. Its eyes glowed with furnace fire, and in its skeletal hand, it clutched a cracked brass whistle. When it raised the whistle to its lips, Sarah dropped to her knees, bleeding from her nose and ears. Jake collapsed onto his side, clawing at his temples, screaming. But Maya remained standing. Her body trembled. Tears streamed down her face. But she didn't fall. The conductor lowered its head to her, and for the first time, it spoke. Its voice was a rasp, like coal grinding on metal. You are the last, the one who opens the gate. Call the train, and your suffering ends. Call it, and you will ride with them forever. Maya shook her head violently, choking on her own sobs. I don't want this. I don't want any of this. The conductor tilted its head. You will. The depot waits. The fire never dies. The train is hungry. Its hand reached forward, blackened fingers brushing against her cheek. The skin burned where it touched. But Maya didn't pull away, because when she looked into its furnace eyes, she saw herself screaming from the window of the burning train. Sarah forced herself up, gun trembling in her hands. Get away from her, she shouted, voice ragged. The conductor slowly turned toward her. It didn't flinch at the gun. Instead, it raised its whistle. Sarah fired. The bullet ripped through the conductor's chest, sparks and ash spraying outward. For a moment, she thought it was hurt, but then the hole in its chest glowed red, like coal stoked to life. And when it exhaled, fire poured out. The walls caught. Instantly, the house was burning. Jake screamed, pulling Maya toward the back door. Run. We have to run. The three of them stumbled into the night, smoke and flames spilling out behind them. But the whistle followed, blasting through the trees, echoing across Hollow Creek like a death sentence. They collapsed at the edge of the woods, gasping for breath. Sarah's gun was useless. Jake's strength was fading, and Maya still saw the words glowing in her mind. Maya Collins, reserved, she whispered, almost to herself. It's not chasing us. It's waiting. It wants me at the depot. Sarah turned sharply. Maya, no, that's what it wants you to believe. But Maya shook her head. No, this doesn't end until I go back there. Until I face it. The whistle blew again, soft this time. Almost approving. The fire consumed Maya's childhood home, painting the night sky blood red from the edge of Hollow Creek woods. She, Sarah, and Jake watched the roof collapse into itself. The whistle screamed once more, long and triumphant, before fading into the trees. Maya wiped soot from her face. Her voice was steady now, though her hands shook. It's not going to stop. Not until I go back. Jake staggered, coughing, eyes glassy. You can't. That's what it wants. It'll kill you. Sarah shook her head. No, it doesn't. Just want her? It needs her. She's the last piece. Maya turned toward the distant, overgrown tracks where Hollow Creek Depot waited. Then let's finish this. The walk through the forest was endless. Every tree looked the same, their blackened trunks twisting upward like skeletal arms. The whistle followed, rising and falling, sometimes ahead of them, sometimes behind. Jake kept muttering to himself. His lips cracked and pale. They're here. I see them. I see them in the trees. And he wasn't wrong. Faces flickered in the bark. Burned passengers, mouths open in eternal screams. Every time Maya blinked, they seemed closer, pressed against invisible glass. Sarah grabbed her arm, pulling her forward. Don't look at them. Keep moving. When the woods broke, the depot finally came into view. It was larger than Maya remembered, though she realized she had only ever seen its ruins from the outside. Now it loomed, every shattered window glowing with an orange light from within. The air smelled of soot and oil, heavy and suffocating. The faded sign above the entrance still read, Hollow Creek Depot, but the letters dripped, as if painted in fresh tar. Inside the station was alive. The burned train stood on the tracks, blackened steel twisted and shrieking, with every pulse of fire that ran along its length. Passengers pressed against the windows, their faces blistered, their eyes hollow, and at the far end of the platform the conductor waited still, silent, mask glinting in the FIRELIGHT. Jake fell to his knees, sobbing. They're calling me. I can't fight them anymore. The scars on his arm, the letters of his name began to glow brighter, smoke curling from his skin. Sarah tried to pull him up, desperate. Jake, stay with us. Don't let it take you. But when he looked up, his pupils had burned away, leaving only black ash dot. His voice was no longer his own. They want me back. He staggered toward the train. Maya screamed, reaching for him. Jake, no. But Sarah grabbed her, pulling her back. It's too late. He's already on the manifest. And then, with one final scream, Jake stumbled up the steps of the train. The doors slammed shut behind him. Through the window, Maya saw her friend engulfed in fire. His mouth opened in a silent scream as the passengers dragged him into the dark. The whistle blew again, shaking the entire depot. The conductor stepped forward. Maya stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. One by one, her friends were gone. Ethan, Lily, Chris, Jake, and now it was her turn. The conductor raised its hand toward her, and for the first time, the burning passengers pressed their palms against the inside of the windows, not clawing to escape, but beckoning, inviting. Maya stumbled forward, as if pulled by an unseen rope. Sarah grabbed her arm, screaming, "Don't. That's what it wants." Maya's voice was hollow. I can hear them. They're calling my name. The conductor's voice thundered through the depot. The train is ready. The last passenger must board. You will finish what was begun in fire. Sarah raised her gun again, hands shaking violently. Stay back. You're not taking her. The conductor tilted its head, mock amusement in its molten eyes. Foolish child. The fire already claimed you. Sarah looked down. Her bandages were soaked through. Her name carved into her flesh now glowed red hot, the letters blistering and smoking. She screamed, dropping the gun as blood poured down her arm. Maya rushed to her side, holding her as she convulsed. But Sarah grabbed her by the wrist, eyes wide with desperation. Don't let it take you. Don't. Before she could finish, she was ripped from Maya's arms. The shadows dragged her across the platform, pulling her screaming into the burning train. The doors slammed shut. Maya was alone. Her breath came in ragged sobs, the fire reflecting in her eyes. The conductor raised its whistle slowly, deliberately. When it blew, the sound tore through her chest like knives. Her legs buckled, her vision swam, and when she looked up again, she was no longer standing on the platform. She was inside the burning train. Maya opened her eyes. She was standing in the aisle of the burning train. The seats around her smoldered, flames licking up the upholstery. Passengers sat strapped in, their skin blistered, their eyes melted, their mouths locked in endless screams. But none of them moved, they just stared at her. She stumbled down the aisle, choking on smoke. Through the window, the world outside blurred into a river of fire, as if the train rode not on rails but through the inferno itself. Somewhere deep within, a whistle shrieked, vibrating the bones in her skull. At the far end of the car, the conductor waited. Its massive frame filled the doorway, glowing eyes burning holes into her. It raised its blackened hand, pointing to the seat nearest her, empty, waiting. "Sit," it rasped. "Your name is written. Your place reserved." Maya shook her head violently, coughing, clutching her chest. "No, I never asked for this. I never wanted this." The conductor stepped closer, molten coal dripping from its chest wound. "You were chosen long before you breathed. The fire carries forward. The line never ends." Its voice deepened, rattling the train itself. "You are the final ember. With you, the train is whole again." The passengers turned their heads in unison, their eyes burning sockets. "Maya, Maya." Her friends' voices wove among theirs. Ethan, Lily, Chris, Jake, Sarah, all of them calling. Her knees buckled, suddenly dashed the floor beneath. Her shifted. She was no longer in the burning train. She was back in 1963. The station was full of people alive, bustling, laughing, unaware of what was coming. Children clutched tickets. Families waved goodbye. And at the center of it all, her grandfather, Thomas Collins. He stood at the station doors, holding a brass whistle in his trembling hand. A shadow loomed over him, the conductor, waiting even then. Maya's breath caught in her throat. "No, Grandpa." He raised the whistle to his lips and blew. The fire erupted instantly. Screams filled the air as flames engulfed the station. The train roared to life, consuming everyone in seconds, and Thomas turned, his face burning, his skin peeling, looking straight at Maya. "You must finish it," he rasped. "You carry the flame now." The vision snapped. Maya was back in the burning car, sobbing, shaking uncontrollably. The conductor towered over her. Blood calls to blood. The gate opens only for its keeper. Board, and free them all. The door to the next car screeched open, leading deeper into the train, deeper into the fire. Maya staggered to her feet. She could feel the heat peeling her skin, feel her lungs collapsing under the smoke. Her friends' faces pressed against the windows, begging her to join them. She realized the truth. She could end it, but only by taking her place. She looked at the empty seat, at the conductor, at the endless fire waiting beyond the door, and she whispered, "No." The conductor froze. The fire around them sputtered. "No," it growled, voice cracking like thunder. Maya's voice trembled, but she stood tall. "You don't own me. You don't own any of us. This ends with me." She pulled the brass whistle from her pocket, the same one her grandfather had left behind, the one she found in the box, and she blew. But this time, the sound wasn't shrill. It wasn't piercing, it was pure. A single, clear note that cut through the fire like glass. The passengers' screams quieted. Their faces softened, one by one. They dissolved into ash, freed from their burning seats. Her friends' voices whispered in her ear, "Thank you," and then they were gone. The conductor staggered back, clutching its chest. "No, you cannot. The fire must feed." Its body cracked, glowing fissures spreading across its charred flesh. It screamed, a sound so loud the glass shattered, and then it exploded into cinders. The train collapsed around her, flames consuming everything. Maya felt her skin burning, her lungs failing, but she didn't run. She didn't scream. She closed her eyes, clutching the whistle to her chest, and she let the fire take her. Epilogue. A month later. Hollow Creek Woods was quiet again. The depot stood in ruins. Its scorched timbers collapsed. The tracks buried under weeds. No whistle, no fire, nothing. A group of hikers passing through the area stopped at the ruins. Curious, one of them noticed something glinting in the ash. He reached down, brushing away the soot. A brass whistle, perfectly intact. He lifted it to his lips and smiled.